Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Welcome to the April 13th, 2017 session of the Prescott Planning and Zoning Commission. I kind of did away with introducing all the members a long time ago, but today I will have to introduce a brand new member, Mr. Bill Sim. As I understand, your background is in insurance.
Insurance, pretty much my whole career.
Okay.
And lately I've been working on construction easements.
Okay.
And my dad was a member of the Saugus, Massachusetts Planning and Zoning Board.
You kind of know what it's about.
Off the old block, but
You kind of know what it's about.
that's an interesting.
Well, hey, welcome to the group here. You replace a man that was on here for so many years, I can't remember. 15 years, maybe? 18 years, or something like that. More than that? I've been on that long. He had to be on 18 or 19. Len Scamardo. Anyway, I heard about Len the other day. I guess he's doing about the same. So, let everybody know that. Okay, let's get on with it. Approval of the minutes of the last meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
Yep, move to approve the February 23 meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Corrections? Nope. Everybody in favor, raise their right hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, first item on the agenda. We have, this is a site plan approval. 17-001, site plan for Pine Haven Apartments, 42-unit complex on White Spar. George?
Thank you, Chairman. As you introduced it, this is a request for a site plan approval. This is going in association with a water service request that goes to City Council. And as you recall, a little over a year ago, Council changed its water policy to require that at least a site plan approval through this process must accompany a request for water to them. It either occurs at a site plan review or at a subdivision plat or perhaps at the actual building permit stage itself. So this request is for site plan review and approval by this body to accompany that water application to Council. The water application has had a preliminary review by the Council's Water Issues Committee and has been recommended to go to Council subject to your review today. So the location is south on White Spar. It is currently mobile home park. There are two parcels involved. Those two parcels will have to be combined together for this development to occur because buildings would cross that interior lot line. The property is zoned multifamily. It allows the use by right. In fact, it would allow a larger number of units than can physically be fit on the property. In this particular case, it's surrounded by recreation space on one side, residential property north and south, and some commercial property along White Spar just immediately north of it. The site plan itself is pretty standard, straightforward. It's an L-shaped driveway entry, provides access to each of the buildings. There are 8 total buildings, 7 residential and an office. The only issue that staff found as far as strict compliance with code in looking at this is that building number 7 is a little closer to the rear property line than it should be. That can be adjusted by just canting the building slightly, or there are options for an administrative adjustment that would also bring them into compliance. There is a fire department turnaround because it's a dead end up in between these two buildings. That fire department turnaround also will assist our trash trucks making a turnaround as well. They have sufficient parking. Building heights are within the requirements, and there are sufficient areas around it to be landscaped to meet our minimum requirements for landscaping and buffering. Based upon the information we have before us and this level of detail, we would get more detail with building permits later. Staff finds this to be in compliance with our codes with the one minor exception of Building 7. With that, if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And driving past there in Peterson Lane coming over, jumping into White Spar, what what's the width of the drive in and out of the project? How wide is that? And how far is it from the Peterson, the intersection of Peterson?
See if I can show you on here. So the current access to the property is almost exactly across from Peterson Lane, somewhere in this vicinity. There are trees covering it. It's a little hard to see. The width of the driveway at White Spar Lane is about 50 feet. The interior drive aisle for circulation within the complex is 24, which is our minimum requirement.
Is ADOT going to require them to improve that bridge?
I don't know. I think that's a likely occurrence. That's strictly going to be them dealing with ADOT in that case. That section of the roadway is outside of local control.
Right, so you just slough off that responsibility to ADOT, right?
We have to.
Yeah, as far as the setback back here, this is all open space from Hazley.
It is. It's designated as recreation space
So-
by zoning, but it's an open space
And
buffer.
I think the people that live up here will be so thrilled to get rid of that mobile home park that I don't think you're going to have a problem with a couple of feet.
Probably not. The administrative adjustment would let them get up to, I believe their setback requirement in that area is 20 feet, so they would need probably 2 feet.
I don't think you'll get any complaints from Hazley Board. Okay. Commissioners?
One other thing I didn't mention before, there's provisions made for on-site retention or detention of stormwater. It appears to be larger than they would require just based on looking at it, but there are some off-site flows that they have to handle as well. So that's been very preliminarily looked at by our staff. That's something that we would get details on with the building permit and engineered stormwater drawings.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions?
I visited the site, and I do have some concerns on traffic issues. At White Spar southbound, as they're coming northbound, it's on an inside curve, and visibility isn't great. I can see people exiting the subject site and potentially having some relatively high-speed traffic coming up White Spar. Has there been a consideration of that as far as maybe an acceleration lane or something that might be made a little safer?
At this point, the city has little or no control over anything past that property line designated in red. That's all going to be a negotiation with ADOT as to whether an acceleration lane is necessary or whether a widening of the roadway is necessary.
Okay. Maybe we can get some answers from the developer.
They'll have to negotiate that with ADOT.
Any other questions?
Well,
Jared?
Per their
With
requirements.
Phil there, that was what brought up my question, going down there. And I don't believe they line up. There's something wrong.
They're offset by about 20 feet.
Right. Almost.
Yeah, there's about a 20-foot difference in the alignment.
But that was my concern too, about the traffic.
Yeah, it comes in pretty fast.
And the other concern, of course, is left end, southbound left end. So there's a possibility that ADOT could either require an acceleration lane for northbound traffic leaving the site or require a center turn lane for southbound traffic making a left into the site. Either.
Like approve it subject to ADOT's review? How's that work?
Our rules and regulation and your authority extend to the right-of-way line. In this case, it's unusual because most of the time we have control of rights of way, and our traffic engineering folks are involved in it. But they will not be at all outside of the property involved in any of the negotiations or discussion. You could put a condition subject to any ADOT requirements,
Well, you've
leaving
already,
that open to ADOT, but that's
you've already
sort of
got
a given.
That, yeah. I mean, you've already got that approval of ADOT. Okay. Anybody else? No? Why don't we hear from the developer?
Morning.
Hello, I need an address, name and address.
Randy Goodman. I live at 965 Panican Drive here in Prescott.
Okay. Have you how far have you got into it with ADOT on that access?
We talked to them quite a bit when we were going to replace the mobile home park with new mobile homes. They wanted us to adjust the drive south, and other than that, they didn't have much in the way of requirement. What led us to the apartments was actually the encouragement of the city staff. You know, mobile home parks looks nice now, in 20 years, maybe not so nice. So we abandoned the mobile home park replacement idea and went with this. And actually, we were going to go back to ADOT, of course, and talk to them some more. They had some reluctance about the roadway because they just finished it, as far as tearing it up. So that'll be something that we work on once we get past this phase, I'm sure.
Well, I think it's a good spot for multifamily. I think every time I drive by it, I anticipate a multifamily project there. In fact, I always thought it would be a good spot for senior housing. Is there going to be any kind of, you're going to lean towards seniors on this project?
Well, I think a lot of you know Guy Noss, and he owns the property just to the north of me, and there was a lot of discussion about that, combining Guy's property and mine for a senior housing facility. And at this time, no. We're just strictly focusing on this. I hear a lot about workforce housing when I go to the PAC meetings, so that's been our focus. I want you to know, too, you haven't seen elevations. I have seen them. What I have planned here are two-story buildings, rock face, nice roof lines, garages, enclosed garages, so we don't look at all their junk. I really want a nice-looking project. This is something I'm not going to sell. This is something I intend to keep for myself. And I want a nice stamp on the city.
Now, not all the units have garages, right?
No, buildings 1 and 2, we couldn't squeeze them in. They're going to have covered parking
Okay.
with storage. Once again, I don't want to look at their stuff. But buildings 3 through 7 all have enclosed garages.
Okay. So maybe senior housing, maybe not, huh? Or workforce housing, maybe not. But,
Well, that's been our discussions, workforce housing, yeah.
okay.
My intent is to do a bit of an upper scale because I think that's what complies with Paisley and what's, it's a nice area.
It is a
One of
nice
the
area.
nicest areas in the city, so
Yeah.
I want something nice
Got some
there.
nice ponderosas in there. Are you able to work around them at all?
I hear a lot about that. The problem is when we disrupt the underground flow line, they'll die.
Well,
And
if
then
you
we've
get
got a
too
100-foot
close to
dead
them.
tree, so.
Well, you can get within 10 feet of them, maybe 15 feet.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on that, so I'm
Okay.
going to defer on that one, but, I mean, yeah, certainly if we can keep them, we will, because they're beautiful, but it
Yeah.
breaks my heart to cut them down.
But it doesn't look like there'd be very many that could be saved.
No. You almost have to you luck out if you say, you just hit and miss because you really haven't, there's not enough room there to position the buildings to miss
Right.
them. Yeah. But try your best,
But we're
right?
surrounded by them, so we
Yeah,
get to
you're
look at
surrounded
them.
by 'em,
And that's the unique thing about this design that I really, really like is the back of the buildings, which all have decks and patios, all face some sort of wilderness. Whether it's the Granite Creek side or whether it's the Hazley side, it's all trees and open area. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
So it's going to be pretty special to live there, I think.
These are two-story?
Two-story.
No parking underneath. The
no.
garages are attached.
They're attached garages kind of in the front.
Okay.
The second story will actually be above the garage. The first floor will, of course, not.
Okay. Well, we really don't need to, as far as a site plan review, we don't need to see elevations. I mean, it's not part of
No.
that approval.
We sometimes get them. It's to just give you an idea of what
We
you're
get-
looking
yeah,
at, but
right.
it's the site design itself that you're approving.
Okay. Is this something we're going to act on today?
Yes, sir. The anticipation is you make a recommendation today.
Commissioners, I really don't see any controversy on it. I've always expected a multifamily project there. For 22 years, and I driven by it.
Where's your dog going to pee now?
I don't know where my dog's going to pee now. But it's a
We are going to have a dog area. You can bring your dog in as a guest. Bring your bag, though.
But we're happy to get rid of that mobile home park.
Yeah, I was too. I had a failing infrastructure in there, and I had some rather unique individuals living in there that I wasn't too happy with. So I shut it down over a year ago. Worked with the state of Arizona Housing Commission to do that and got those people, moved to another area. Most of them moved out of the city. So, with the frequency of the police department in there and fire, maybe that's not a bad thing.
Okay. Terry?
George, could you explain just a little bit more about the water situation? I have a question. When can he start? How does he get that?
So the request for a water application, a water service agreement, has already gone to the city's vetting committee. It's a subcommittee of council that reviews things. They're called Water Issues Committee. So they've reviewed this, and they've made a recommendation in favor of a grant of a certain amount of water to this project. But again, the council policy was that we don't want to give water to a project unless we know it is a practical design that can actually come to fruition and be built. And to do that, they've used this commission to review and approve those site plans for the purpose of determining that this is a viable project and that it could ultimately end up being worth us allocating a very valuable resource, the water.
Well, how many units were in there all these years?
Well, I have currently grandfathered 7.5 acre feet of water, and I need 10.5, so we're talking about 3 acre feet
okay. So
additional.
you do have some allotment.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's pretty
they do
minimal.
count what was already there.
I don't know how
There's
many
a
mobile
process
homes were in
involved.
there, but quite a few.
27.
27, so,
Well, some of them, the word mobile home was a loose term, but 27.
that's
It
true.
used to be mobile.
That's true. Any other questions?
Thank you, sir. My question is really for the city, for George. If this wasn't part of this new water partial allocation policy that we have, what different items would we be looking at today if this was done through the normal channels?
If it didn't involve a water allocation, you would not be looking at it today. The zoning allows it.
Yeah.
The site design meets the requirements. There's no waivers necessary. It would typically go straight to a building permit, but there's a fairly significant cost to the building design and building permitting. So this allows someone to go through a less expensive process to get a water allocation, and then once they have that and have a commitment to a site plan, they can commit the larger sums of money to the actual building permit.
It just seems kind of cumbersome here because we're getting a piece of what we would have gotten before. We're not able to see the project in its whole to really make what I would consider to be a thoughtful evaluation of the project. I understand, there is questions about that access and off, not lining up with Peterson and the site, and I had those issues myself,
Right.
To a probably lesser degree than my colleagues here. But I'm just feeling like I'm not getting the whole picture, and I'm hoping this process will
Again,
abate at some time.
the concept of this process is not to force a property owner to commit a very large sum of money to create a full set of building plans for each and every one of those buildings and have that submitted to you for review.
Right.
The idea there is if you've gotten to the point where you can prepare all of those plans, it's going to be a staff review. That means you're already meeting all of the requirements that this body would normally look at. If they were rezoning, it's a different story. You would get a different step in the process. So this is sort of a cost savings measure for property owners to allow them to get into the water review and approval process.
Do we know the
without
height of
having
these
that
buildings?
commitment. And again, without a
Two-story.
water allocation, if they didn't ask for water in this particular case, it wouldn't come to you at all. It's purely a staff review.
And they could build up to 3 stories and 142 units.
Up to. Practically, they couldn't get them on the site, but
In
you're
fact,
right.
I expected a higher density on this site, so this is a plus. This is low density.
Well, I like the project. I'm not complaining about that. I just don't know everything that I typically would like to know
Okay.
in reviewing. I have no problem with the project. I think it's a good project for the location. I personally would have kept the mobile home park, but but that's your
You don't live in
judgment.
Hazley, do you?
No, I know mobile home parks though.
He's had experience as a slum
And,
landlord.
No, I think it's a great project. A great thought put into the garages, and I don't think you're going to have much view there because the buildings themselves are going to block each other, but I think it's a good spot for it. I have no question about that. My question is really about our process that we're going through right now.
If there are particular things that you would like to see on site plans, if you let us know, we'll try and get that as part of the submittals to us. Generally, we're asking for what you have in front of you.
When this
Building
went through-
locations, setbacks, parking spaces, the basics of a site plan.
Well, thank you. When during the PAC meeting, was there any comment from traffic?
The comment was they're going to have to deal with ADOT. Now, before we issue a building permit, they're going to have to bring us something that says we've got access approved through ADOT. So that negotiation will occur before we get building plans.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, as far as additional information, it's elevations and sections would be a courtesy, to us.
We can certainly ask for them.
We
though.
certainly can't. I mean, we wouldn't require it. Okay, thank you, sir. Anybody in the audience? Unless you have anything else to say?
No, if
Okay.
you're done, thank you for your time.
Okay. Anybody else out there like to speak to this project? No? You guys ready to go to vote on it? Okay.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
I got to close the public hearing. Okay. Yes, sir. Make a motion.
Move to recommend approval of site plan SI 17-001 Pine Haven Apartments.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Commissioners? No? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Item number 2. Item number 3, actually. Final plat for Yavapai Hills, Unit 9, 16-001. George?
Thank you, Chairman. This is a request for a final plat of part of a phase of Yavapai Hills, and I'm going to give you an aerial map that's going to look like it's from orbit. In order to show you where this is in relation to other things, we have the Walmart and the mall. This is the already constructed, already developed Yavapai Hills, and this is Phase 5, or excuse me, Unit 9, Phase 5. The request today is part of that to be final platted. We have done partial final plats with other developments. In this particular case, the original intent was to do all of Phase 5 as a single final plat. The issue in question was related to the number of lots that could be financed and constructed at one time. So the request is to split that final plat of Phase 5 into 2 phases, sub-phases. So this is Phase 5A. That will be followed at some point in the future by Phase 5B. One of the confusing issues that came up with this particular request is the alignment of lots and topography. City codes, wow, is that going to be difficult to explain? I'm sorry. What you have in your packet's a little bit easier to read. The colors on this have bled out and it's very dark. So the original design was to have the larger Phase 5 with the lot arrangements. Some of that was done based on preliminary reviews of the site. It was also done under rules that were in effect, city's rules in effect, in 1997-98. Things have changed over time. They've done better reviews and better surveys of the area. And the proposed alignment, and again, you have a much easier to read version of this, I hope. The proposed alignment of the streets and the layout of the lots is different than the original. One of the things that is done during a final plat is a determination that it's in substantial conformance to the preliminary plat. Substantial conformance does not mean exact. And in this particular case, there are some very specific rules to be used to determine substantial compliance. And I give you a copy of the resolution of council from 1998, which established those rules. Generally, what council was looking at that time was that the exterior boundaries of the subdivision didn't change significantly. That road connectivity from the subdivision to the exterior boundaries was substantially the same. Internally, things can change and not trigger the substantial conformance criteria of that resolution. In this particular case, it looks quite a bit different, but in fact, it doesn't trigger any of those criteria in the resolution that says it's not in substantial conformance. So So based on the resolutions criteria, staff finds it in substantial conformance. The number of lots being proposed is approximately half of the overall phase. The remainder of those lots will come in as a second final plat for 5B. And at this point, it looks to be close enough that the exterior connections to the subdivision will not be affected by this change. So it conforms to topography much better than the original, again, based on better surveys, newer information. It also conforms to current city requirements for road design, which the original could not meet. Steepness of slope of the roads,
Right.
curves, angles, those types of things simply couldn't be met because the current requirements are different than those that were originally used for the layout. So in this particular case, while it looks different, it is substantially in conformance based on staff's review. And I'd be happy to answer questions, and I think we have a representative here who can answer questions of...
Similar size lots?
Lot sizes are very similar. Lot locations are similar. Again, topography came into play. They will be required to maintain a certain area of open space, just as the original subdivision plat had. The preliminary plat's areas have to be maintained.
Because Yavapai Hills is PAD?
Yes. So one of the things that we looked at when we first started reviewing the proposed design was obviously the terrain and topography, not the open space. So the pink areas that are shown on the plat were originally on the preliminary plat were originally the open space areas. Those are going to get shifted around because the lots aren't going to align with that any longer.
Could you go back to that overall view of Yavapai Hills? Is everybody satisfied with exiting out of some of this remoter area? How many exits are there onto 89, onto 69?
Yavapai Hills has two ways out onto 69. All of the area north of there was preliminary platted to presume that those two exits would be used. There is no opportunity based on topography, connections to 69, or intervening other private properties to make additional connections out. At some point in time in the future, there is expected to be a roadway that would pass along the north side of this. It's been called the Sundog Connector for years. It would eventually make it to Prescott Valley and connect where the Home Depot store is. That would provide additional connectivity for Yavapai Hills. There would be an interchange at that point that would allow connection to that roadway. That's many years in the future. It's not something the city is intending to build on its own. It's been discussed by the Central Yavapai Metropolitan Planning Organization as a future roadway. It's in fact shown on their planning maps for future roadway. But they're not going to fund it either. It's going to be funded by development that occurs on private properties along the way, with perhaps municipal infill in certain areas. It would cross state land in a number of places, and the state land's unlikely to develop in the near future.
Has fire?
So that is a long-term.
Has fire
connection.
reviewed the?
Yes.
This for that?
Yes.
For that issue?
For connectivity and access, yes.
Okay, and they aren't going to require sprinklers or anything else?
Not unless particular lots require that.
Boy, that's a long ways out of there, from up there.
It is, but it's through an existing subdivision. They're already in and out of that subdivision all the time.
Yeah, I
And
know.
just unusual for something that looks so far away. There's a fire station right in here. So there's actually, it's almost like Yavapai Hills has its own fire station.
George, could you just kind of walk us through how an ambulance gets into the back part of that and how it gets out to 69?
Given the aerial photo and how zoomed out it had to be, no, I don't think I could trace the roads for you.
With these small plans, it's really difficult to try to figure out.
Yeah.
In the future, could we get like a full-size plan, something like this?
Yes.
Really difficult.
For the aerial photos, I can get twice this size for you. But
That's my concern. Prior to that.
Ken?
But that has been reviewed by our fire department as part of this review
I'm
process.
finding myself echoing Terry quite a bit today. This is hard for, I mean, there's nobody, I don't know about Mr. Sim, but golly, there's nobody under 50 here. We can't read this stuff. 60, 70. I don't agree with you totally. So what we're saying here is, this is a portion of what had been approved before.
Yes. In 1997, 98, council approved a preliminary plat for all of Yavapai Hills. They have been slowly final platting in units or phases since that time. And this is, the only unusual thing about this request is that they're requesting a partial final plat.
125
Phase
lots.
A instead of phase 5 total.
And if they change the number of lots in the second phase,
If they reduce the number of lots,
No problem.
so that the entire phase doesn't have more than it did originally, they're still in substantial conformance.
and
They
if
just can't increase the exterior boundaries of the subdivision, the exterior connections to the subdivision, or the total number of lots. Those are the three big
and if they want
criteria.
to increase the total number of lots in the next phase, what's their process?
They go back to council, they'll have to obtain water for those lots. This is considered a groundwatered subdivision. It predated our requirements for the alternative water portfolio modifications that were done then. It would be a difficult process to do.
And how many lots are we talking about?
125.
125, okay.
75 in this phase and 142, I believe, for the entire phase 5.
Okay, it's 75.
I think you said in your staff report,
Yeah.
oh, the whole thing was 125. I'm
Commissioners, any
sorry.
other questions?
Incorrect.
No? Is the developer here? Mr. Geese,
Oh, he's got his new shorts on.
we still need your address.
Good morning, Jason Giese, 923 East Gurley, Suite 203. So maybe I could shed some light on
Go.
kind of this phase and the overall game plan. I think that'd be helpful. So like George said, this Yavapai Hills is a planned area development, PAD. We're required to have 25% throughout. We're over the top of that requirement as it relates to the total open space in the subdivision presently, and we'll maintain at least 25% into the future. Sunrise was our problem. Previously, Sunrise in Unit 9 Phase 5 was approved at a 12% slope. The exhibit is hard to see, but the reason that Sunrise Boulevard and access into Unit 9 Phase 5 had to be relocated is to meet the 8% max standard that is the new standard, if you will. The bottom line with Yavapai Hills is we're dealing with a subdivision that's as old as I am, which is 44 years old. We've got some constraints, and we'll continue to have constraints as we actually develop the property. On paper, Unit 9 Phase 5 has 125 lots. George was accurate when he said that from a financing perspective, specifically because of the cost of getting Sunrise Boulevard up the hill in solid rock, the total cost of the phase just got to be too big. It wasn't financeable, so we had to cut it down. In the future, to the north, there's another 217 acres, I believe, that has 1,350 dwelling units worth of grandfathered water allocated to it. I'll end up in front of you guys in the future on that phase because, frankly, it's not going to. There won't be 1,350 rooftops on that plateau. The reason that the water density is so high is prior to the state declaring groundwater mining, developer came in, Mike Klein Sr., and said, I want max density. It's what all the master plans in the area did in order to lock in that water right. And then I'll go back now and from a market perspective, topography and terrain is a huge deal in Yavapai Hills. Come in with a rational and reasonable plan for that density, but density is going to move down definitely. It's dang sure not going to move up over the course of time. Access is at Yavapai Hills Drive as well as Sunrise. So we have two access points. They're signalized on Highway 69. I can answer the question that Terry was asking. It's 8 minutes to drive from the sales office on 69 back to this phase. So you get to kind of drive through the decades and review architecture in the area, starting in the mid-'70s up until today.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good overview. Are there other specific questions?
Are you peeking over the top of the hill there with those houses?
We are right on the edge of the hill. So to the west, it is a 100% view back into Prescott, Thumb View, Granite Mountain. And then to the north, we get on top of the ridge.
Right.
And now we can see north out to the peaks, etc.
That's going to be a great view.
Yeah, it's the best piece of land is not this one, but the next one that we start working on.
I thought the maximum road was 10%.
It's changed.
It's 8. The fire department got us again, huh?
I believe that occurred when the
they're
city
1,000
adopted the
horsepower.
GESs.
Their 1,000 horsepower engines can't go up at 10% grade. Jeez.
The record will show I had no comment.
Lots are half acre, so they're
okay.
consistent with everything else that's in Yavapai Hills.
Any other questions, commissioners? No? Hey, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Anybody in the audience like to speak to this? No? I sure don't see any problem with it. It's just consistent with what the preliminary plat that had been submitted a long time ago. It's just kind of moving lots around and making the streets work, basically. So, is this something?
I think you can see from the criteria in that resolution that council was anticipating that things like this would occur when they adopted it.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be an exact.
We can act on this today?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, any other questions? No? Close public hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
All right.
Find it. I recommend to approve FP 16-001 final plat for Yavapai Hills, Unit 9, Phase 5A.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Nope. Everybody in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye. Aye. All right. Thank you, sir. Okay, public hearing item 1. Master Plan Amendment 17-002. Amendment to the Dills Ranch and Granite Dills Parkway subdivision, Phase 1.
Thank you,
George?
Chairman. If you don't mind, I'm going to talk about both together. They will take separate actions, though.
Okay, because we've got a preliminary plat, but we've got to do the amendment first.
Correct. So the actions would be recommend to amend the master plan and then recommend the revised preliminary plat.
Okay?
So I'm going to show you the two versions of the master plan that affect this property at this point in time. So this is the current master plan. The gray areas were intended for commercial or industrial uses, and to help you align things because the lot layout and road connections are slightly different in between the two master plans, this roundabout is consistent in its location on both this one and the new proposed master plan. So from the roundabout, access to the subdivision is from the north via State Route 89A. You would come in to the roundabout. This is east of the roundabout, and it affects some of this, and a substantial amount of this. So again, here's the roundabout, and that's consistent, it's already in place. So these are the proposed changes. For this area, there's not much of a change in the number or size of the lots. There is the connectivity. The connection to the main east-west roadway has been shifted a little bit. It originally came out this way.
Right.
These roadways have been changed. This area was larger lot residential and commercial. These areas were commercial as well. So you can see there's a substantial amount of new residential being proposed. Some of the realignment and partitioning of residential has occurred because of the success of this portion of the subdivision, which has already been final platted and is actively, very actively building at the moment. The smaller lot, compact neighborhoods have been very successful out here in this corner. So the attempt here is to replicate that in an area that had some of it, but also commercial. This is one of those things I think the representative of the developer will be able to talk to you a little bit more about, but placing commercial in the middle of nowhere effectively doesn't necessarily draw commercial users to that area. It makes sense to have commercial near a neighborhood, but it doesn't necessarily draw the types of larger users that you would assume. Small neighborhood-oriented type commercial could be drawn to this area, and they've left enough commercial to supply that for the density that they're anticipating in this overall northwestern quadrant of the subdivision. So they've increased the number of lots because they've decreased the size of the lots. They've modified the roadway connectivity and to provide better connectivity actually than the original plat, the original master plan, and to provide for adequate connectivity throughout the smaller lot subdivision. So you'll notice that most of these have more than one way in and out. This is a different situation. They only have one. There's topography limitations up here that don't let you make a connection to the north, and the same here. Otherwise, there's actually better connectivity provided by this roadway network than on the original master plan. Master plan changes are required before a plat approval could be done for the areas. So one of the things that's necessary here is to approve a revision to the master plan to allow this new design, and then follow that with a recommendation to approve a revised preliminary plat so that they can pursue the engineering necessary to final plat to meet this requirement. Based on staff's review, various department reviews, there have not been any significant objections. There's some infrastructure work that will need to be finished out, and that normally occurs between a preliminary plat and submittal of a final plat. That is something that's normal process, so we don't see anything abnormal about it. The additional lots will require additional water from the city through a water allocation process. That would occur at the time of the final plat being submitted or at the time of the revision of the preliminary plat. Council normally does it at a preliminary plat, so that's where we anticipate it in this case. That the additional number of lots is not huge. It is a change over the original plat to the point where we anticipate that there will be some discussion at council and a water issues committee meeting about this project. And just a item of note, I have been in contact with, this is an out parcel. This white area is not part of the subdivision. It was held by the property owners and left out of the master plan and left out of the subdivision plat that was done by Granite Dells Estates. They have been in contact with us through a planner who is trying to work out some kind of small subdivision for them that would fit in this area, and they've been provided with this information to start the work on. They've been advised that today's action will probably firm that up. They will be designing something that will comply or conform to the general development in the area and connect to the streets as they're shown on this design. So that's something to see in the future. That'll be a separate master plan and a separate subdivision plat that will come before you. We do have a representative of the developer here. As far as the plat goes, this is the lot layout shown on the plat. So for description and discussion purposes, I'm just going to leave this up. The only difference between this and the subdivision plat that you have is that's black and white and this one's color-coded. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have for staff.
Okay, so the commercial's been reduced substantially.
Substantially, yes.
And additional, I assume, patio-type houses. This looks like pretty high density.
Yes, these are very, if you haven't been to Granite Dells Estates.
And these match the ones that are under, that
very
they're
similar.
doing now? Okay. And that's, you know, they're adjusting to the market. It's good. Any questions? How about the develop? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. George, is Arizona Eco Development Prescott Valley just on the east side of that now?
No, there's a substantial area before you get to that. It's a significant distance over. So the orange you see in this corner is the end of that. So this is the outside boundary of the subdivision. And then that development's actually on there's an intervening piece of property, and then the development in Prescott Valley is on that side.
So is that Arizona Eco Development then the property prior to PV?
I don't believe so. I'm not sure who owns that intervening parcel.
And because
I don't believe Arizona Eco
on,
Development
you know,
has.
PV's general plan, they planned on connectivity in the Prescott on to this, you know,
Yes.
because they're 3,600 home subdivision on the
Yes,
east
and we
over
plan
here.
the same thing.
And they
This-
plan to share the same roads and connect to the green spaces and all that in terms of a strategy, but whether that's being implemented through this, I'm not sure.
It is not implemented through
We
this.
hope so.
Eventually, as the road makes its way to this point through final plats, it will stub to that property boundary and allow for that connection to occur in the future.
Sure. Okay, I mean, that's only reasonable. All right, developer here, or would like to speak to us? Kind of give your viewpoint about what you're doing and why, and
Sure. Good morning, Commissioners. My name
name-
is Mark Maloney. I'm actually with Hoskin Ryan Consultants, the engineer representing Granite Dells Estates property.
do you need an
in-
address of some
Yes, 147 Grove Avenue, Suite A, Prescott,
Okay.
86301. I'm here to represent the owner of the property, Michael Fan, and Granite Dells Estates Properties. Can answer any questions you may have on the project. I think some clarification to what George said. I can show you a map that actually shows the boundary outlined on the existing master plan today. What's being proposed is an additional 91 lots. I think originally approved was, 1,308. We're proposing 1,399 total residential units. As George mentioned, what we're doing here is eliminating a lot of the commercial there. I think the developer, as time has gone on, has seen that the need for the commercial in this area is not as great, and the commercial that he is proposing is more compatible with a master plan community. I think the two commercial parcels proposed for this, the one being in the northwest portion of the site is slated for a commercial hotel land use, and then the property just southeast of the roundabout is commercial. And I can't say for sure, but I think there's been some discussions with regards to possibly a restaurant going there. So both of those uses are compatible with a residential project. As you discussed earlier, and as George mentioned, the density is slightly increased on the project. It's not necessarily high density. We do have some parcels shown in the blue right there, which are 50 foot by 80 foot, which is an attached product, which two lots combined with a common entry into the lot with garages on each side. So there's two units that are combined on two separate lots. And then we have, I would say that the other parcels are very compatible with the sizes shown in Phase 1 in the northwest corner of the project. We're proposing 60 by 130, 80 by 140, and then the lots down to the south of Dells Ranch Road are 100 by 150. So those are pretty appreciable sized lots.
good lots. Any of those gated?
Not individually, other than, for the project itself. These are not individually gated. What we did want to do is provide kind of a separate subdivision type feel, entry roads coming into each one. So we provide a wider residential road coming into the units with a divided roadway with a median in the center, which would allow for monumentation for the individual subdivisions. And I think better access into the parcels. There is a clubhouse parcel proposed on this site, just west of the exception parcel that George pointed out. We think it's in a good location, kind of being in the center of the project with good access from the surrounding properties. If I can answer any questions you may have on the project, I'd be happy to.
Jerry?
I've got a question. The tail that goes down to the clubhouse from the 5.94 acres, is that deep enough for any development? Is that just a drive? What's the depth of that?
Well, there's not any additional development. Oh, I see. Yeah, the tail of the commercial parcel. That's actually has a water line and electrical in it coming from the well site that's located just west of the clubhouse parcel. So there's utilities within that area. So that's basically going to be maintained as an open space parcel.
So there's no development on that?
No. In fact, the subdivision that's just to the east of it, with existing water and electric within that strip there, we really can't change the grade at all in that area. So any of the grading that's going to occur on the 50 by 80 lots terminates prior to hitting that reddish color.
What kind of multifamily are you anticipating here?
That parcel would be better spoken to from the developer, which I apologize can't be here today. He had to, Michael Fan is really involved in this process, but had to get away to Nevada on a last minute notice. But I'm really not sure about what's actually being proposed for that area. That is not part of the amendment to this master plan, and I believe has already been vested in subsequent changes to the master plan.
Any other questions?
That was my question. You're saying the magenta colors here to the west of the roadway is not part of this?
No, correct. It's already in place on the existing master plan for a commercial type use. Their anticipation
Under the original one, wasn't it?
is one of the
this
gray areas
here?
for commercial, right?
Is here, so it's still commercial.
It's commercial designation, but their intention to put
Multifamily
multifamily is
type.
permitted by that commercial designation.
My only question, and I think it's smart to respond to the economy. They've been very successful in selling homes here. My question is these 4,000 square foot duplex lots, or whatever you call them. We used to call them duplex lots. I lived in one in Scottsdale. I can't even remember what they called it. So you're going to have each of these 4,000 square foot will have one house, and they'll share a common wall. Is that what you're talking about?
They'll share a common driveway with side entry garages. So you'll have a unit here and a unit here with a common driveway in the middle with side entry garages off the side.
But they're not zero lot line or sharing a property line.
No, sir. No, sir.
That's what you were at, yeah. I thought that he was
That's what
talking.
it was.
I thought
He
you
said
were talking
attached.
zero lot
Yeah,
line.
when you said attached.
That means
Right.
40 foot? You said?
Currently, on the preliminary plat, we're proposing 5-foot side yard setbacks. I know we've been talking with
Gemini, that's what, Gemini.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the.
I was talking about the Gemini homes
Common
where
wall.
your property
Common wall.
line is your building. Where
Right.
you share the property line, your buildings go out this way.
Right. Michael Fan's been talking with Mandalay Homes, which actually is the builder on a majority of the property in the Northwest. The products for these particular lots are being proposed by the developer, which is then selling the individual subdivisions to home builders, one of which we believe to be Mandalay Homes. They've discussed certain ideas in terms of the type of products that they want to put on these lots, but with the subdivisions not necessarily being turned over to the home builder at this point. I don't think it's really locked down in terms of the exact products that will go.
Well, thank you for saying
on
that, because that was
any
my
lots.
thought on these lots this size. Things could change on that, and I hope we're okay with
It'll work.
possibility.
It'll work.
It'll work.
With a common drive, 26 drive, 20/20 for the garages, 5-foot setbacks. It'll fit within 80 feet. It might be a nice little product.
You know, it helps kind of fill the different needs of the varying, you know, financial backgrounds of people. It kind of offers a product that people is lower maintenance, not having to upkeep the large yards and so forth. So I think there's a good mix of different size properties being proposed by the
Well, these would
developer.
be quite similar in some respects to the cottages
Yeah.
at Prescott Lakes, where they had 5,000-6,000 square foot lots, and
Yes.
it
It's
was-
a little
it was-
more compact than that.
It is a little more compact than that, but I think it's a great product. The project's been very successful, and obviously fills the need that the community's had some pent up demand for. So I don't see any issues here for myself.
Is this something we're going to act on next time?
You can act on it today,
We
sir.
can? Okay.
Has been advertised for
All
a
right.
public hearing.
Commissioners, any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
Have additional alternate water allocations been made to these additional units?
No, sir, not yet. That would be something the council will do at the time they approve the revision of the preliminary plat. That's typically associated with a preliminary plat. That will be moving forward to the Water Issues Committee and then on to City Council subsequent to this action.
I could provide a little bit of information regarding that. Although the water allocation doesn't cover the entire 1,310 lots proposed, or 1,399 as proposed now, it did not cover the 1,310 in entirety based on the previous master plan. However, the water that's been allocated for this subdivision does cover what's currently been vested, the Phase 1 property, and then the proposed Phase 2 property still falls under the current water allocation. So what we're proposing to be approved in the preliminary plat does have water allocated for those lots.
The first phase, excuse me for interjecting here, but the first phase plus this proposed change totals how many homes?
The first phase plus this one, there's 259 being proposed now, and I believe the first phase was 220, so 499, I guess.
So it's well within what their allocated water,
Correct, yes.
which I think was 700 or 800.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, I worked as a land planner for about 4 years, and those were the days when the architects did all the master planning, not civil engineers. But
We work, actually, a land planner, Mr. Commissioner, a land planner actually did come up with the original concept.
Oh, that's good. Hey,
We, of
good.
course, just had to interject and make it work a little bit better.
No, I actually was going to compliment you and say that I think this master plan is actually improving every time we come in and make a change, because I think it's coming together quite nicely.
Thank you.
And I just have one question, and probably only Mr. Fan can answer that question. With the clubhouse here, can I show the whole master plan? With the clubhouse here, and about 70 or 80 acres here, that looks suspiciously like maybe an executive golf course. Is there any plan for that?
Are you a golfer?
Yeah.
Actually, I've heard no
He plays golf,
indications
but he's not a
of-
golfer.
I really don't think that there's any plan for a
Don't
golf
you think
course
that's a
in here.
natural? Look at that.
Yeah.
So I will point out, Mr. Chairman, that both our 2003 and 2015 general plans strongly discourage golf courses.
But
Water.
a golf course would count as open space in a PAD, right?
It does count as open space, yes.
Okay. It would. All right.
No, it's not a permitted, no. it's
No?
not
Yeah, the-
permitted. Golf courses are not permitted.
The problem with this particular area is it's got quite a bit of topography in it.
Yeah, it does.
So,
Well, it'd
you
be
would-
like playing Stone Ridge. You know? Okay,
But, yeah, we already have trail systems through some of that area.
it just looks suspicious to me, that's all. With a clubhouse overlooking all that green space. 9 holes on either side of the road, be perfect. Okay, anybody in the audience like to speak to this? No? Thank you, sir.
So, Mr. Chairman, we provided you a single motion and included both, but if I could ask your indulgence to make 2 separate
Okay.
motions. That's how it will have to be acted on by
Okay,
council.
let's do that.
So master plan first and then the preliminary plan.
Okay, public hearing's over, closed. I'll entertain a motion, one at a time. Master plan amendment first.
Okay, I'll do the master plan then. Move to recommend approval of master plan MP 17-002, Granite Dells Estates Phase 2.
Second?
I have a motion to second. Any further discussion? Nope. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye. Aye. Okay. I'll entertain a motion on PP 17-001.
Okay, I'll do that one too. Move to recommend approval of PP 17-001, Granite Dells Estates Phase 2.
I have a second.
Second.
I have a motion to second. Any further discussion? No? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
All right, sir, thank you. Okay, George, anything else for us? Summary of current events or anything?
I do not have anything this morning, no, sir.
No?
Thank you.
All right, we're done. Adjourned.